how does a boy from Bikfaiya in Lebanon end up as a reputable producer in Los Angeles?
In Hollywood.
In
It
Hollywood,
took a few years, but essentially, look, I was born and raised in Lebanon. I was born in '82, and it was during the war. Grew up in Lebanon, went to school in Lebanon, went to university in Lebanon, and then I think the first experience with cinema that I remember is when my dad took us to a place called La Cité, which was like a cinema chain in Jounieh. And I watched a movie called Roger Rabbit.
Who Framed Roger
Who
Rabbit?
Framed Roger Rabbit?
Legendary movie. Love that movie.
Legendary movie.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? And I cannot forget this movie. And you know, it's like, obviously it's a film that I've seen so many times now. But and then the second film I saw is Batman with Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And
90s throwback.
and I fell in love with that world, and I realized that I kept going back to the cinema. Like as a kid, I would go to like Circuit Planète or something like this, and I would go watch movies all the time, and I loved that. But funny enough, I did not think about a career in the cinema or in the film business. Like that world was just like, okay, you go to the movies, you watch that, and you know, like a dreamer. And then my grandfather had a printing press, and I would go every summer work at that printing press. So I learned all the printing process. I know how to print. I know layouts, fonts, serifs. Funny enough, all of this came back to me at some point in my life. But then when it came to choose a career, funny enough, my dad, who had an office that helps young people decide what they want to become and do, we decided that, okay, you know what, since I love like marketing and I love like advertising design and things like this, maybe I'll do advertising and marketing. Yeah. And I studied advertising and marketing at the NDU. And then after that, a friend of mine who was producing a show called Top Gear for NBC. I was sitting at the pool with him in Bikfaiya, and he's like, what are you doing? And I said, look, I'm taking those summer jobs at my grandfather's printing press, but I was like 17 probably, or 16, 17 at the time. And I said, I want to do something else. He's like, we're starting this show at NBC, and it's a car show. And I loved cars, and I loved design and all of this. So I started working with him on that show. And I fell in love with the whole process. I felt like it's just incredible. You know, you have these cameras, you go to these locations, you test drive these cars.
The creative input in
it's
general is fascinating.
It's insane, right?
Yeah.
And there's a rebellious feeling in it a little bit. And then I decided, and I went and I told my dad, I wanna do something in the cinema. Like I wanna do something in this world. So I finished my advertising and marketing, and then I went into adding credits, which gave me another degree of radio, TV, and film.
How was your dad's reaction at that time when you told him you want to get into that world?
Nothing. Like my dad is one of the coolest. You know, he's one of the coolest motherfuckers on this world.
Nice.
He always said to us two things, which I will never forget. Do what you love. Do it the best. Don't ever be afraid of giving credit to somebody else, because if it's theirs, they'll take it anyway. And it's an amazing thing. And so he didn't care. He's like, okay, sure. And my dad is very into education. So when you go to him and say, look, I want to get more education, that's not going to be a no. Just go.
It's not going to prohibit you.
Education in any field.
Yeah, and I remember like, you know, I'm into watches, and then I went and I studied like watchmaking, and he was so excited. That's like recent. And he was like, oh my God, you're going to class. Like he loves that when you know, so he will support it. So I did radio, TV, and film. So I had 2 degrees. And then my brother that year, who went to do an American Board of Medicine in the States, was a little bit of an impact for our family. Like when somebody immigrates, it's just difficult. So then I said to my dad, let me do a master's in production at the Alba, just a year before I go to the States. Because I want to, like that was my career path now. I'm just going to go become a film producer. And I love that career, and I love that path. So I started the program at Alba, a master's degree in film production, and it was a French program. So we had French. It was like between France and Lebanon and all of this. It was really good. And then the 2006 war happened. We had to shrink the whole program into like a small. Anyway, we finished the thesis, all of that stuff, and then at the meantime, I was applying to film schools. I applied to AFI, which is the American Film Institute, to USC. I wanted the AFI because AFI had a very learn by doing style, and the others are a little bit more theoretical. USC, UCLA, Chapman. UCLA didn't take me, USC didn't take me, Chapman took me, AFI took me, which what I wanted. So I said yes. Funny enough, I did not get the FedEx package. I will never forget that because they said yes to me and I never got the FedEx package of acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So you
then
never
they
knew you were accepted.
No, because again, to Lebanon, you don't get shipping.
Yeah.
There's no,
It arrives
there's no
halfway.
logistics.
It arrives halfway through the semester. You're like, oh, you
Yeah,
got
this
and-
day and age, you just get an email, man.
And these guys are like, we sent you that package, you didn't sign it. I'm like, which package? Like, I'm in, but which package? And then they resent me another one, and then they knew I was coming. And then the war started in 2006. And I remember it was very difficult because I left with no bag. I'm leaving this country. I'm like immigrating. No bag. I told my parents goodbye on the road in Bikfaiya, in the middle of the road.
Was that
it
the
was
first
very
time-
hard.
Was that the first time you ever left Lebanon and you like traveled? Or,
No, it wasn't the first time I traveled, but it was the first time I'm immigrating. I'm like, this is not gonna be my place, my home for a long time.
Yeah.
And I took a taxi through Syria to Jordan, flew from Jordan to Dubai, spent 3-4 days in Dubai, went to Holland, spent 2 days there, went to Detroit, and then from Detroit I went to LA.
So you took the short route.
I
to
took the
LA.
short route.
Yes, great.
I wanted to make sure every country is and then I got there, and it was the first time I go to the States. I've never gone to the States before, and the first thing, and I remember that the States felt so old. Like when you look at the infrastructure in the United States, you're like, this is very old, because you're like, wait, in Lebanon we have poles with like cables on top of them. In the US it's still the same thing.
Yeah, they do.
Right? But then you learn through time that in the States, if something is not broken, they don't fix it. And then when they fix it, they advance it in leapfrogs, we'll get to that, but it's fantastic. And then I went into the school. I obviously had a hard time finding a place, all that stuff, but we got through it. And then I started attending the AFI, which was a phenomenal experience. A phenomenal experience because on a human level, every individual in the United States is valued at what they're trying to do. They're not valued by preconceived notions of where you're coming from, what's your religion, who's your family, where you live, what's your money, none of that. There's no variables that determine your sort of like respect except what you're putting out, essentially. Yeah. And I thought that this was incredible because unfortunately, I grew up a little bit bullied in Lebanon. One, because I had a health issue, which I have celiac, I have a celiac since I was 6, so I had to take like Tupperwares when I go to school. A lot of bullying. Okay, you're not the kid who's eating a sandwich, you're the kid. It's like there's a lot of that. And then I wanted to do something, which is the entertainment industry. At a time, there's no Netflix, there's no YouTube, there's none of that stuff.
A bit unconventional.
It's very I remember like my dad's friends were like, you're spending all this money to send your kid to the States to carry a camera. Like that's the joke.
Typical Lebanese mentality.
They mock things they don't understand.
It's incredible because it's one thing to disagree with somebody on their path or whatever, and that's okay. It's another thing to bash it.
Yeah.
And in the States you don't find that, and I thought this was heaven. So I loved it. I went through the AFI. My mentors were great. In a crazy turn of events, my main mentor is a guy called Neil Canton who produced Roger Rabbit. Oh. His brother produced Batman. And funny enough, when I wrote my statement of purpose to go to the AFI, I did mention Roger Rabbit and Batman, and he was the one who read them and did the interview with me.
Like, I like you because you like me.
Yeah, it's
like the stars aligned.
It was like, holy shit, okay. Yeah. Like this guy, he's like, okay. And he's now one of my very good friends, and his brother Mark became my mentor throughout my whole life. He introduced me into the film industry. He gave me my chances. And his daughter, Neil's daughter, who's my professor at the AFI, is now like a lead executive at Paramount, and she and I are making 3 films together. And so it's incredible, like how you sort of like get in and proliferate into that. I met a guy at the AFI. His name is Scott Silver. He became my business partner. He's still my business partner. We founded the company together. The thing is that I graduated in 2008. 2008, there was a massive financial meltdown. Yeah, in the United States. Okay, I would call my friends here in Lebanon, and they were doing very well financially.
Lebanon was one of the least affected places.
I know, and I'm like, we're fucked. I'm like, we're fucked. How is this the American dream? There's no American dream. That's a hoax.
Riyad Salemi, he had shit under control.
And I'm like, how are we fucked? This is the country that went to the moon, and you guys are doing so well. I started thinking of really going back to Lebanon and the Middle East to do those things. Smartly, my dad was like, no.
Fuck
you
that.
have
Thank God
to
for
get
that.
experience in the United States. You'll always go back. He supported me financially. I mean, honestly, for like a year and a half after university, I couldn't find a job. I was interning constantly. I interned for Scott Rudin. I became his assistant. Then I got paid a little bit. And then I went on a movie Mark brought me, which is Immortals. And I was like making like $7,000 a week. But then, it's very short-lived.
Yeah.
And then you have to like another year where you're not making money. So
You gotta
it was
save
just-
up all that money.
Yeah, and well, you don't really. That's the problem.
That's LA.
Because you think it's gonna
That
be like
lifestyle is so
That's the
fast-paced.
Lebanese in you. Like,
Yeah,
I have
I-
5, 6, I'm going to spend.
Exactly.
And also that industry that he's in as
Yeah.
well.
And you just think like that's gonna last forever, right? So, yes, I did not, but assuming I did for it,
Let's just say you did.
like, correct. Then you start but this is how you start also learning how the business works. It's up and down. You make a film, you don't make a film, the film gets greenlit, you don't get greenlit, so on and so forth. And the single best thing that happened to me is that I wasn't an American citizen until 3 years ago. Because if I
Mabruk,
was an
أول
American,
شيء.
thank you. Because that's funny. Because if I was an American citizen, what would I have done? I would have left. Because I was not an American citizen, I had to stay. I had to make it work. And I used to say to myself, the only way forward is downward. I'm just gonna go down.
Fuck
I'm
it,
gonna
yeah.
fucking do this.
Yeah.
And it was freaking insane. It was hell. Because you're not making money, you're in debt, you're trying to make things work. It's difficult. My business partner, he brought money from his family in Texas, but also, I mean, they can't, fund the whole operation. I mean, a movie costs millions of dollars. I mean, it's not sustainable. And then we made the first film for $125,000. Made okay with it. We made another one for $600,000. Made okay with it. During this whole recession in the US, and then the US started working out. And then you're like, okay, holy shit.
Things are going
Actually,
back
this
to normal.
country
I'm seeing it.
It's a behemoth.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's a crazy place. And then Netflix started becoming digital. And then YouTube started. And you're like, oh my God.
Oh,
Look at all the opportunity.
It's
Everything was
insane.
clicking.
You
everything
cannot
was clicking.
complain.
Yeah.
And then we started building the company. We did a film. So then my business partner came up with this idea called which became The Pyramid, which is a film we did. And I said to him, you know what, Scott, I'm not doing movies independently. I want to make a film with the studio. And by that time, I spent around 5-6 years in the studio world. So I know a lot of executives. I know the studios. I could just call them, pitch them the ideas. And then Fox said, we'll make the film. And then we made the film with Fox. It went on, made a lot of money, so on and so forth.